Hello friends, professionals, and especially those who are preparing for CISSP. Welcome to the second episode of CISSP Made Easy. In this video, I will be discussing computer crime related timelines and sort of related acts and laws which are necessary to know for CISSP exam. Not from a exam point of view, but it gives a background to answer some of the questions in the exam. And yes, and it gives a bit of confidence when we know that what was the history of different legislations and laws. So let's just start. Before that, let me frankly admit that, and I think most of us feel the same way, that this subject is dry and it requires a curious mind who loves history and dates. Most of us who are in IT, we all love to design, deploy, and fix the stuff. So we need extra effort in studying history and make a sense out of the presented text. So, um, so let's give it a go. Like I will be trying to present the chapter, not the whole chapter, but this specific topic of computer crime, which starts at page 147, and we'll try to explain in a visual way. One common problem with this book is the way headlines are presented. So if you see that these headlines don't have any number, there is no numeral reference like 1, 1.1 or 1.2. So at times it is difficult to connect the dots, and it is very common for us to get our thoughts out of the overall context of the subject we are studying. So studying these concepts and doing repeated diving in facts, figures, information, and concept is very exhausting at times. Personally, to me, it has been very exhausting. So I was trying to find a solution, and one way to tackle this situation is to have a mind map or as a guide. Like we make some sort of picture or some sort of tree diagram, and get a mind map as a guide and hang related informations like stuffs on a peg to get a picture which can stick in our mind, right? So if we get that picture, it serves as a reference to hang other information around it. So when we say C for cat, we get a picture of real cat in our head, not something which we don't know, right? So I will be presenting this content in a similar way using Microsoft Visio. So I have already created the Visio, and um, and let me go straight to it. Okay. Uh, so this is how I have presented the whole timeline which is discussed in the book. It starts from 1984 to 2022, and I have put some extra information like I have taken the reference of commercial computing industry growth, taking Apple company as an example, because this gives an idea, a context of the computer crime happening worldwide and how these laws changed based on the consumer experience of the computing environment, right? So the world was changing. The computing started way back in, I think, in 1970s. It started picking up in both government and commercial space, and IT was something next to the industrial revolution, and all computer crimes were dealt with the traditional criminal laws such as CCCA. So Comprehensive Crime Control Act was actually a law, like a set of laws which dealt with the punishment of crime and the traditional computing issues related with crime or some sort of data breach or something that were dealt under CCCA, right? So this was year 1984. As you see in the diagram here, in CCCA there were some a specific thing which actually constitute a crime. So things like if someone accesses classified information or financial information in a federal system without authorization, or in excess of authorization privileges, then that actually constitute a computer crime. If someone causes some malicious damage to a federal computer which is in excess of $1,000, or they modify medical record, or they do this trafficking between the interstate computers, like interstate commerce computers. This is more specific to the financial institutions. So this was CCCA, right? So this was this was done just to accommodate the computing industry in the overall legislative and penal umbrella, I will say, like how to get justice for a victim or for government, and how to control the crime. And this CCCA was used at that time. Now eventually, like when computer become very widespread, like if you see, by the time in 1984, first Apple Macintosh was released. So this was a very remarkable time, and computer started actually going in consumer market, like people were buying computer and doing computing with a personal computer. So the personal computing space was gaining momentum. So with this, I will say that the crime surface area also got increased. People were having new opportunity to target computing system, basically. So in 1986, what was done was something remarkable, and it was the need of time at that age. They came up with Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act was specifically dealing with crimes related with computing. So before 1986, before CFAA, those crimes were dealt with the Comprehensive Crime Control Act. Now in 1986, they started dealing with CFAA, which actually had some different specific rules related with computer crime. So these rules are there in the book. I will not repeat it for the sake of making this video, keeping this video interesting, not repeating the stuff which is there in the book, and which will make sense if we put this in the timeline, right? So let's move, like what happened next. So let's save to photos, and then we'll move here. So with this Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, what will happen basically? So these laws were actually very very specific to computing system, but you know that the judges in court, they were still the old people. Like it was still a difficult moment for judges to pass judgment for computer crime. So there was a need of doing a revival in the sentencing guidelines. So what happened, that with all these new laws and our senior judges with legacy jurisprudence methods, they came with a set of guidelines. So there come a need to relook the sentencing guidelines. So the federal sentencing guidelines released in 1991 provided punishment guidelines. So we should have this word in our minds, that this was specific to how to punish someone if he or she is found guilty, and on top of that, what will make someone guilty of a computer crime, right? So the guidelines here actually formalize the prudent person rule, which requires senior executives to take personal responsibility for ensuring the due care that any ordinary prudent individual would exercise in the same situation. So this prudent man rule was basically, let me make it in a circle. So this was something which was introduced as a as a central theme to judge that if someone is liable for a crime or not, right? So if a manager or someone actually exercised due care, then he's exempted from that crime. I hope it makes sense. Like let's suppose there is an organization and there is a crime. Let's not talk about crime. Let's talk about simple stuff like something went down, and no, that will not be a criminal act. Let's think something like some data is stolen, like someone actually there was some important document and which is it's stolen. So who is ultimately responsible? So if the manager has put everything in place, he has exercised due diligence, like he appointed a security professional, there was regular check mechanism of the secure documents, there was a lock and key, there was a process for the shift handover, and everything was there, then the manager is exempted because he did everything what he was supposed to do. Then it will move the responsibility to the next person in line, right? And then there comes the three burden of proof for negligence, like the accused, which is being accused of having done the crime, should be having a legal obligation to do that job, to do that job which was not done. So we can't find someone else who is not a security guard and charge him with something which is a job related with a security guard, right? So this legal binding has to be there between what was committed as a crime and what was the obligation of the accused, right? And the second thing is that the accused should be found that he do not complied with the set standards. So this is the second burden of proof that has to be proven for a committed negligence. And third thing is very self-evident that there should be some relationship between the negligence and the damage which is done. So overall, this thing helped actually the people who were passing the judgment, basically the judges, to actually decipher CFAA and pass the judgment, so if someone is guilty or not, right? So this was sentencing guidelines. So first 1984 CCCA, which was actually not a computer crime act, it was a comprehensive crime control act dealing with the general criminal activity, and that was used initially for computer crime. Then CFAA was introduced to deal specific with the computer fraud and abuse, and then due to the need of this whole legislation, this federal sentencing guideline was put in place, right? So after that, as we know that this computing industry grow exponentially, like you see here I have put Macintosh. First portable version was released in 1989, and in 1991 Mac OS 7 was introduced, the Mac PowerBook was released. So it was a very exciting time. This 90s era was very very exciting in terms of like the way music was getting changed, the way like media, film industry, and everything was getting a shape for a new generation. So similarly, the computer crime was also getting exposed to the new vectors, like the new gateways. So in 1994, this Computer Abuse Amendment Act was passed, and this was very strict. Not it was so strict that there was a case wherein like Aaron Esquarts, he committed suicide by he just downloaded some papers from university, and he was found guilty of computer crime. Basically, in some situation, the end user license agreement can be used to prosecute someone that he do not use the software properly and cause this crime. So for these all things were introduced in a Computer Abuse and Amendment Act. So what was the major high point of this one? It actually allowed the imprisonment of offender regardless of whether they actually intended to cause damage or not. This was very strict. Like if like unintentionally something happened, then he will get jail. So yeah, so this was strict. And then we see that it started getting shape. There were various amendment to this 1994 Computer Abuse Amendment Act, and things were relaxed in some area, and things were made strict in some area. So yeah, we will not go into that detail because it's a detailed discussion and not in the scope of CISSP to go into that depth. The other major thing which happened in 1996 is this National Information Infrastructure Protection Act. As you see in the name itself, the name infrastructure, it relates with the national assets. Basically, if you see what it talks about, the railroads, gas pipeline, electric power grids, telecommunication circuits. So whatever laws were applicable for the computing environment for federal computers or Department of Commerce, those same rules were actually being applied to the general public infrastructure, which also use computing resources extensively, like railroads, gas pipelines, electric power grids, and telecommunication circuits. So for the examination perspective, or having a bare minimum, this nervous system inside our brain for these timelines, we should just know that in 1996 this National Information Infrastructure Protection Act talks about the computing environment, which is not specific to the federal organization or the general public sector, right? So let's move on. What happened next? Next was George W. Bush, the Iraq War, and those time were the tough time, and I think those were the times which gave rise to the new problems, geopolitically worldwide. Now, in the area of computers and information security and cybersecurity, this was the time when things were getting centralized. So prior to 2002, all these legislation and acts were used, and there was no central authority or central set of document as such which can serve as a standard or baseline. So in 2002, Federal Information Security Management Act, which was a federal initiative, but it was supported by NIST, and NIST actually started publishing a lot of documents. They started working on the documents which actually eventually published in 2010. So this was the period of 8 years. I think this was the time when NIST was working, very tirelessly to work on different set of books and documents which can serve as a framework, right? So here in FISMA 2002, Federal Information Security Management, NIST was involved. So this was a key point we have to remember. NIST was involved to give a proper structure to this whole security program, which United States government wanted to enforce, and the vision was to make things a standard, to use similar language, and to have some sort of collaboration and knowledge transfer and things like that between different functioning head of the government, right? So that I will explain in the next phase what happened. So this was 2002. So in 2010, NIST established Risk Management Framework. This is a very important document, SP 837. So nothing great about it, but this is one of the outcome of the FISMA initiative, which was started in 2010. Now, coming fast forward to 2014, when Obama came, Obama actually did some sort of decentralization, I will say, because prior to Bush, everything was very unstructured. So George Bush actually put things in a structured way at that time, and this centralization caused some problem, and that was addressed by Obama. That's why this terminology, you will see here that the terminology at the time of George Bush was management, and at the time of Obama it became modernization. So what was in this modernization actually? So if you see here in FISMA, what Obama did is to centralize federal cybersecurity responsibility with the Department of Homeland Security, with the exception of defense and intelligence. So, this whole US government, like, which I have got this idea from news, different Hollywood movies and everything, that they have something called a defense. We all know that defense is basically Pentagon, right? And then they have got intelligence, which is I think CIA plus FBI, and they have this Department of Homeland Security. Let's call it DOHS, Department of Homeland Security, which I think is basically Home Affairs and Commerce, right? Department of Revenue, IRS, those things. So if in the government there is no conflict in the overall national security as such, but Pentagon, intelligence and Department of Homeland, they have different priorities, and at times these priorities clash. So there may come a situation where Pentagon might think in a different way for the national security, right? Let's call it national security. But at the same time, Department of Homeland Security is also concerned with national security, but his priority will be different. So there is always, not always, but most of the time, a degree of difference in the way they work. At some time, Pentagon will find some information confidential, which may not be that confidential for Department of Homeland Security, or like there will be some sensitive information for CIA and FBI they don't want to disclose with Department of Homeland Security. So if they have a uniform cybersecurity program, so that will not fit into the ecology. So that's why Obama actually very smartly actually removed the cybersecurity responsibility function and decentralized it between Department of Homeland, CIA, FBI, and a Pentagon, right? So this is what this modernization meant, right? With this modernization, there were three things actually that came in picture. One was this Federal Information Security Modernization Act, NIST, which I talked about. The second was Cybersecurity Enhancement Act, this guy, where NIST published two publication, 853 for federal government organization and 871 for non-federal. And then CSF, Cybersecurity Framework, was voluntary. Let me get out of it to get the more complete picture. Yeah, here. So now if you look here, there is a third component which is called NCPA, which is National Cybersecurity Protection Act, So this was basically an interface between the Department of Homeland Security and other civilian organizations. So if Department of Homeland Security uh, uh, actually work on some cyber attack and some analysis and things like that, and they published list of vulnerabilities or list of attacks or information for the federal government, so they published the same information to the civilian organization as well, and that was done using NCPA, right? So this is how the whole timeline is and is being explained in the Cybex 9th edition book. I hope this information has been useful to you, and yes, if there is any suggestion, comment to improve it further, just let me know. Thanks for watching the video. Have a nice day.